Dr. Claire Konkes. She's presenting on Green Lawfare on the Reef, the strategic use of law in GBR communication. Thank you, Claire.
I took this photograph of my daughter playing with seals in Tarakana in Lutruwita, Tasmania last summer. And it's in places and moments like this that I'm particularly reminded of my deep gratitude to the knowledge and stewardship, I'm a bit nervous, excuse me, of country, including sea country, by the original custodians of the lands in which I work and live and get to be. And it's an absolute pleasure to come all the way from Lutruwita to speak with you today, and I pay my respects to the First Nations people in this room and the original custodians of where I'm speaking. So thanks very much for having me. Press that button. Yes, so 4 moments among many in the politics of the Reef. The 1967 challenge to plans to mine Ellison Reef for cheap lime. The 2020 litigation against climate activist Ben Pennings. In that same year, Peter Reid, successful unfair dismissal case against James Cook University. And a couple of months ago, the Living Wonders case in the federal court. What have all these moments share? So what they share is how environmental law is interlocked with the politics, and in this case, the politics of the Reef. I'm very curious about this, and so my talk draws on that little book parked in the corner there, third plug for the day, thank you for that. I use environmental law very broadly to cover the rules and regulations for managing natural environments. I draw from good people like Elizabeth Fisher at Oxford, who describes environmental law as springing from the troubles of politics and society and economics. And she also calls it hot law, which is to say it's in a constant state of flux and conflict, and for the 4 reasons listed here. And what I like about these problems, that the controversies are structural and there's difficulty in identifying the sources and the targets. There's all these actors flying around, there's an unstable knowledge base and mutually incomprehensible understandings of the world. And what I love about that is I think, oh, that's what our social scientists do. That's what our tools are. That's the places that we play. What can we offer here? Luckily, much of the work has been done, which makes my life fairly easy. I hope you have encountered Brett Hutchins and Libby Lester's work, particularly their concept of mediatised environmental conflict. It just provides a foundation of a way of looking at things. They describe the politics of environmental conflict occurring when 4 different spheres interact. You only need 2 of them, but often 4 bump into each other. Activist strategies, journalism practices, formal politics and decision-making, and industry activities. So when these worlds collide, we observe the shifts in power. Danny, I'm with you. You know, who gets to have a seat at the table? Who gets to shift power because you've embarrassed someone or you've moved an issue out of the public domain and into a courtroom? So that's where power is exercised. So basically what I did is I went, well, what's going on when Peter Reid, and then we've got the Living Wonders, and there's court cases after court cases. What's going on there? So I thought, well, you know, let's take this idea of these 4 various factors that Liz Fisher gives us, 4 areas of interaction. And why don't we choose, some of you would be familiar with the idea of following the object. Why don't we just pick a moment in time, pick an idea, a legal idea or a legal case, and just watch as it travels through the great messiness that is media. So I'm just going to do it very quickly because we're all doing it quickly today. Environmental controversies have complex foundations. So the first thing you kind of get your head around is that this is more than just the immediate grievance that's defining the moment. So the rise of climate litigation reflects deeper issues such as entanglements of economic power and democratic decision-making. And these underlying contexts become particularly evident during particular moments. So as I say, pick a moment like a court case and have a look at what's going on there. Actors and their strategies reveal a very broad range of individuals and organisations involved in these moments. Journalists, activists, industry and government. When Graham Reed Fern decides to pick up a story or ignore a story, then he's chosen a moment to be an actor in the way we hear the communication of a story. And then when good journalists and bad journalists and everything in between pick two actors to interview and ignore 3 actors, they're part of the story. So understanding how these actors are involved, not only their identities, but also their communication strategies and their practices and their networks, starts revealing a really powerful picture of who's involved. The lack of stability in knowledge, I think, is really important. Stability in knowledge offers governance systems, consistency and predictability, and a semblance of fairness and continuity, which of course is the trust that we've been talking about today. The wicked nature of environmental problems means there very rarely is one single knowledge system. The instability becomes evident when we observe how certain people and voices are legitimised in debates or ridiculed. And we also know Naomi Oreskes' Merchants of Doubt and others have shown us that often it's manufactured controversies around tobacco, asbestos and climate change where the instability of scientific knowledge is used to very disappointing effect. And finally, incompatible understandings of the world. We can view these understandings as claims constituted by various contexts and actors and knowledges, and by paying attention to what appears to be mutually incompatible worldviews, we can observe actors and institutions, strategies and processes driving the conflict. And inside and outside the courtroom, in legal documents, in social media posts, in media, following a particular discourse or mapping various ways of talking about things gives us a sense of who's talking and what values and ideas are shaping our knowledge of the world. Discourse analysis is useful here. I think it's my favourite. And as Mish reminded us last night, how we talk about things, whether the moon is in love or if it's spiteful and jealous, not only shapes our understandings of the moon, but informs our actions. All this is very abstract, so I'll go back to our 4 moments to show you how green lawfare works. Most of you, I'm guessing, know the story, the origin story of the Save the Reef campaign starting in 1967. It was a newspaper ad. Media has been entwined in the politics of the reef since the very first morning, and it became a campaign that challenged scientific opinion. So we know that the University of Queensland thought that the reef was dead and should be mined, and it took a bunch of ratbags and some amateur divers to take on scientific orthodoxy. Great story. And all that was shared through media and became part of the national enthusiasm for the Great Barrier Reef that we know today. So I've included it here just to remind us that all these different actors using media challenge a stable knowledge base and it becomes unstable. I'm also going to include actors here. We do know John Boost was good mates with Harold Holt, who was the Prime Minister of the day, and we also know Judith Wright, another key campaigner, had very strong personal and professional networks in Canberra. You can never ignore who gets to talk on Sunday afternoon when you're thinking about power. Okay, so Ben Pennings, let's jump ahead to 2019. 2 bad stories, then we'll finish on a good story. Some of you might remember in 2019, Adani's legal strategy was revealed to actually include courts as a tool to bankrupt opposition and to discredit their critics. And that tactic became very clear when Ben Pennings, one of the organisers of the Galilee blockade, got sued by one of the wealthiest men in the world. His legal problems for 3 years have included being tracked by private security operators, failed bids to have his home searched, and a successful court order to surrender his phone and laptop for forensic examination. Some of the activists in the room know about slap suits. This idea of using litigation to shut people up is very much, alive and well. Have a little eye on how people's networks stored in their phones and their laptops are being used to keep people quiet, including the philanthropists who people never really see, but who fund these really courageous campaigns. They're getting scared off. I'm going to skip Peter Reid because I've run out of time and it's such a pleasure. Yay! And we'll just go on to the Living Wonders case. They lost in the federal court. It was doomed to fail, but it was a case showing that our current environmental laws aren't really doing much to address climate change. And the federal court actually said, yeah, you know what, those 2 new coal mines, they're okay. They're only going to contribute a little bit of greenhouse gas, not much, just a little bit, you know, on the scale of things. And actually that little bit probably won't impact areas like... So it was crazy maths. Others have observed that the decision to ignore the impact of climate change caused by 2 coal mines was straight out of the Climate Deniers Handbook that enabled the minister to avoid outright climate denial while still, you know, simultaneously avoiding recognising the impacts of approving large coal mines. So again, we have this incompatible understandings of the world. And what I would say is this playbook is still alive and well. We've seen it for decades, and it's now being challenged in our courts, which I find is kind of interesting. Cases like Peter Reid, the court's judgment also it just reminds us that it's fairly manufactured. So I'm going to finish just reminding you that a small planning matter in a quiet country court, an activist facing millions in litigation, a scientist, despite losing his job, finding an audience in media and really influencing environmental policy, a legal case epitomising a legacy of contradictions in political messaging, all that comes together. It's law interlocking with media and all the actors on the table. And I just want to encourage everyone not to be spooked by the heaviness of, court cases and all the rest, and to watch this little corner of political communication, because it's red hot right now. It is changing so many of our governance structures, and I just think it's worth paying attention to. Thanks.